Hello everyone, Sable here covering the final match of UPL Week 4, and in my eyes, maybe the highlight of the tournament excluding whatever might come up in playoffs. You've got me at 3-0 versus Gastlies at 2-1, but both of us, I would say, pretty well slated to go on a really good run, end up at least 5-2, if not like 6-1, 7-0. So I think this is kind of a deciding match in whether I'm gonna sweep the tournament or if Gaslies and I are both gonna go somewhere in the area of a 6-1. Not to say that we couldn't drop later matches, but I think this is probably the hardest match both of us are looking at in this tournament. I think that's partially because of playstyle. I think that's partially because of spending a bit more time with the metagame and getting up to date with everything. And I think it's funny because we have very similar styles. Gasly's and I talk a fair bit, and we talked after this game, and it's funny how we both picked up that we were doing the same ideas and the same like ideas to counter those ideas in this set. So expect to see a little bit of similar teams and some similar ideas, and I'll talk about those as we actually get into the game. It was a very memorable one for me. Unfortunately, just because of life events in the week, I did not get to prep nearly as much as I wanted. I kind of threw my teams together less than an hour before the match. Not to say, like, not to take anything away from like how Gasly's plays these or what have you, just rather I wish I had a little more time to sit on the concepts I built here. I think some of them were a bit half-baked, and I think that definitely affected how these games went. But I'm just going to jump right into it and we'll talk about things as they come up. So game one, I'm leading off with a Tauros versus an Egg. I'm running a team that's fairly physical offense heavy, and there's also a Kuno. So gonna let it play out for a bit so I can talk a bit more about that. But she leads off with Egg, which is a pretty nice call out on Tauros lead overall. I have been running a fair amount of Jinx and Gengar lead, so it's a nice snipe from her to catch me on a Tauros lead. Going right to the Mewtwo, which I anticipate is going to be T-Wave because it's Gastly's and she does that a lot. And I get a lucky dodge into a Paraslam, so I'm already thinking this is not that much of a threat. Here, I'm not sure if I should have let Tauros take T-Wave, but I just kind of wanted to keep pushing, and there's not really many good switch-ins to Boom 2 anyway. And then I Leer it just to make sure that there's no chance of recover, because she has been running some recover. And throw out a Hyper Beam, so my Tauros got a very good start in this game, and this is really awesome for a Kuno in the back. So following up with Mewtwo, I want to keep the pressure on. I've got Blizzard, but Ghastly's actually bringing Chansey in one of the few situations that I really like it. Like, this is a good spot to have a Chansey. I go straight to Rhydon because I'm just trying to sack it here. I figure it's probably not ideal, and I think here I should have doubled back to Mewtwo, but unfortunately I was a little bit afraid to commit to that. So I just let Rhydon go to sleep. Ultimately, like, I'd rather sack this from this point here. I have more physical offense and booms and whatever to take out the Chansey. So I'm thinking, let's go Mew. I just boom the Mewtwo out because I'm just trying to remove things so that I can get there with Kuno and with Egg. So using Executor here. Now she always sacks Chansey to sleep, so just by removing that Mewtwo, I'm freeing up my sleep. So the idea is once this is down, she's not going to be able to sleep block Egg anymore, and she's probably not going to sack Egg or Snorlax because they have Boom. So I figure she's going to leave Chansey in and let me have it and not risk, for example, me Psychicking on the Snorlax switch and taking it out and then getting sleep anyway. So this was a pretty reliable and accurate read. I do wish my Egg hadn't been paralyzed, but sometimes you miss those. And then going to Mewtwo, trying to like suggest, hey, Amnesia is coming, you have to get out of here, and try to force more T-Wave and push onto Mew. My Amni up. And then just immediately throw the Blizzard because I just want damage to ensure that Kuno can win this, and it's not like Egg or Snorlax are switching into Blizzard anyway. So I'm just going to keep pushing. And I eventually force her to detonate the Mew. So at this point, it's looking fairly good for Kuno as long as Chansey doesn't wake up. Now I'm going to go to Rhydon, just pivot off of it because I don't really need the Rhydon anymore, and this is the chance to get Kuno in. Now Chansey is at 82% and has burned a turn, so at this point I am a little concerned of, oh crap, that could wake up. But she's going to go Tauros first, which I think is a correct play. The idea is if you paralyze this Kuno with a Paraslam, it's a lot easier for Chansey to wake up. I'm just gonna blizz this. At this point, I'm really committed to the Kuno sweep, and she goes hard Chansey, which I found interesting. It is good to preserve the Tauros to take out my Mewtwo and Egg, but here I'm just trying to remove this Chansey before it can wake up, and the problem is, unfortunately, this is not a Boom 2 on my side. So I am really just trying to force her to use up her resources. And I probably should have kept this egg. I think that trading it here is maybe not the right idea, and I should have just gone for Blizzard with Mewtwo and not been so afraid of Boom or whatever. I think this booming out Chansey would have been a pretty game-winning position regardless. But instead, I'm just going to use it here. If my Kuno wasn't paraslammed, I probably would have gone hard Kuno into a Psychic and just clicked that and forced her to go to Chansey. I don't know. But from here, I'm just thinking, okay, I've got to set up and go for it. And this doesn't look very ideal because there's a decent chance it's going to wake up, but it's at 41. So if it sleeps one more turn and I just hit it, I only need one more Blizzard to take it out here. But unfortunately, para, and it wakes, and another para. So unfortunately, I do lose this one because the Chansey woke up right at the end when I was one hit away. Spoilers, but there's not too much more to say here. The Mewtwo does not have T-Wave, so I can't really pressure this Chansey all that well. And it also paras over and over. So a bit unfortunate, but ultimately Chansey was a very good call into my typical brings and got me here. I don't think Chansey in a vacuum beats my teams. I think Gastly's made a very good read on the kinds of things that I would bring versus her, and got rewarded for it. Ultimately, like my teams are usually more boomy than this, but I kind of covered for some of the more Ghastly's typical stuff, and Chansey ends up standing alone at the end, holding off the Kuno. So good job to her for that. As for Ghastly's team, this is definitely not super typical of her. Like relying more on physical offense with T-Wave Mew, T-Wave Mewtwo is very typical of her for sure. It's more so, as funny as this will sound, this isn't like enough booms for a Ghastly's team. I typically like 3 is like a minimum for her. I figure this obviously has 4. I assume this Mewtwo is Boom. It could not be Boom, but I figure it's 4. And honestly, I expect 5 or 6 from her on a lot of days. So fitting in the Chansey, I think this is one of the few teams with a Chansey on it that I actually like in terms of prep against another person. So she wins game 1. Now into game 2. And here we're both actually running very similar ideas. You'll see very quickly the only difference is the lead. We're both running these kinds of wave spam things that are meant to set up Slowbro. Here, I'm just going in with Zapdos to kind of see if this Mewtwo is going to click Recover or what. I assume it's T-Wave Blizz. And now that I know it's Recover, I've got a bit of an idea of what's going on here. And I go to Slowbro, figuring, okay, this maybe doesn't have anything to touch Slowbro. Now, one thing I will say is this is a Reflect Slowbro on my side without T-Wave. And I think that was a mistake. I think that's a little too greedy in a Ghastly's. Like, the idea was basically insulate against Rhydon or Tauros or what have you, but it's not good enough here. And so last game I was running Blizzbolt Mewtwo, and this game now she got me with the Blizzbolt Mewtwo and immediate crit, unfortunately. Um, both of us had this idea of like, hey, you know what's good into a lot of our builds is Slowbro. Let's put some T-Bolt Mewtwo's in there and ambush it. And unfortunately, she got me first here. So I go to Rhydon thinking, okay, this could be Blizzbolt, but it's more likely to be like Psybolt. Well, actually from Ghastly's, it's fairly likely to be Blizzbolt, but Blizz is not anywhere near a guaranteed OHKO on Rhydon, and 2 hits from Rhydon will take out this Mewtwo. So I'm thinking, like, if it's Blizzbolt, playable. If it's Psybolt, amazing. And ultimately just sacking Zapdos because I've seen the Rhydon on her side, going to Mewtwo, ultimately deciding I need to risk Stun Spore because I need pressure. And throwing out the Blizz, I do get a lucky freeze here. Now this Mewtwo is a facilitator for the Slowbro, so it's not going to win con by itself, unfortunately. If it had Amnesia, that maybe could have been even better, but I am getting, you know, Mewtwo has a high crit rate, and I am certainly taking advantage of that here. Now, I am walled by the Slowbro relatively, So I'm just going to try to pivot around it. Ghastly's probably going to throw another T-Wave here because she's smart and realizes what I'm doing. And there it is. Yeah, I don't remember these games flawlessly, but I did figure there's a good chance I'm getting T-Waved again anyway, but just giving me the chance to mess with her positioning a little. But ultimately, after the egg gets in, I do double, expecting the Mewtwo to come in to sleep block anyway. So it's another chance to get Rhydon in. Now, I don't need to block sleep, but I do need to block Stun Spore, and this Mewtwo is not going to be able to be the one to take out the Slowbro in the end. At least not by special attacks. So here, I'm just trying to continue spreading waves, and I'm kind of trusting that Rhydon is now going to have to be my win con. And luckily, Psychic Crit Drop goes pretty far here. I'm just trying to pressure the Slowbro as much as I can. Maybe scare her into thinking a boom is coming, which, is a pretty reasonable assumption here, because I haven't shown recover or anything. And Mewtwo continuing to push through, and she just concedes that the Slowbro is going to die and takes the T-Wave here, and then gets out to Mewtwo. Now, on that turn, I think a Blizzard probably would have been a pretty reasonable click for me. It's slightly more chance to, end up missing, but it covers for every single switch. Oh well. The drop still matters a lot. It kind of keeps this Mewtwo under pressure, makes it a little scarier for it to stay in front of Blizzards. And now I'm just trying to push for as much as I can get before finally ripping the boom that I actually do have. And now with Slowbro this chipped, the egg getting worn down, and Rhydon, I'm kind of thinking, okay, my Rhydon could win this game, but I do need to beat this egg down. And of course, I still have a Mew. So clicking sleep, trusting that she can't go to Slowbro because I'd still be faster than it anyway, and pivoting off of that doesn't really give her any options. And now I'm just looking at this as let's let Mew and Rhydon push through. I figure she's not going to stay in and risk me setting up, but I actually did have a Psychic Mew, which of course beats that. And for this, I just have Boom, so I don't have to sit here and do no damage to it. I really just wanted to get one free hit on the Rhydon to guarantee that my Rhydon was going to beat it. And now my Rhydon's going to come in and clean up. Nothing left for her to do. This is too slow, and the Zam is parried, so it's an unwinnable game. So definitely a bit of good luck. Blizzard Mewtwo came in and started swinging really hard and just getting everything. Ultimately, this is the reason Gastlies and I prefer Blizzard Mewtwo, because 25% crit rate goes very, very far. You don't even need to set up. You just need to find, kind of like Tauros and OU, if you find your entry opportunities and click the good button, right, at some point, you'll get a crit, you'll get a freeze, you'll get a paraslam in Tauros's case, like whatever. And those are how you create your openings, by just generating as many of those opportunities as you can. In this case, when she went to Zam in front of the Mewtwo, like that was essentially just a free Blizzard click. And the fact that it paid off immediately is great for me, of course, but like that's kind of what you do here, and it's what Ghastly's does as well. So ultimately, some good fortune. In terms of the teams, as I alluded to before, it's the same 5 Pokemon except for the lead, which I find pretty funny that we have very similar ideas of what the other's going to bring and how to counter it. Now, this is the game I didn't run with T-Bolt Mewtwo. I actually did in the other 2 games. So she completely destroyed me with that here. I think that was a really nice call by her, running T-Bolt Mewtwo alongside the Slowbro. And ultimately, just if my Mewtwo hadn't paid off like that, this might have been a very different game, but it worked out this way, so 1-1. In retrospect, I don't think I liked Zapdos lead from me. Like, I know she uses a lot of Rhydon, of course. I did kind of think like baiting it out early and knowing that I'm dealing with it is important because of Slowbro, which again, I had Reflect instead of T-Wave on this as kind of a Rhydon countermeasure. I think it was too greedy still. Like, I think I just needed more T-Waves here. So I'd have options for Rhydon to clean up if Slowbro wasn't going to be able to. But it's an idea, and I think that the problem with Zam lead really is that it lets in Executor to get sleep if the opposing Executor doesn't need to be saved for anything, which it often doesn't. Often you just want to get that sleep as soon as possible. So there's like ups and downs. And I think I figured she was more likely to go in the Slowbro direction than the Rhydon direction, but we both went Brodon. So on that note, I think Brodon, just like a better structure than Cloydon. I think running 2 relatively slow mons that both rely on T-Wave heavily is a lot harder than running one that actually has T-Wave and one that relies on T-Wave heavily. I'm not a super big fan of these like Cloydons other people have been bringing, but I do like this Brodon structure. I think there's a lot more flexibility in it just because you have a T-Wave built into it. Unless you're me and you run Reflect because you clearly didn't think enough when you cooked this team up last minute. But it is pretty funny we landed on similar ideas because as I understand it, I think she had a bit more time to prep than I did. Anywho, game number 3. This one, I was running Gengar lead. She's got Zam. I've got Cloyster, Egg, Bull in back alongside Mew and Mewtwo. So it's a bunch of good mons. I don't know if I necessarily like the coherent idea into her, but I just needed a game 3 team at the end. And another Zam lead means another Executor coming in and clicking Sleep. I expected Kinesis out of her because it's a very her thing to do, but ultimately doesn't happen. Now with Tauros, I risk it very early just looking for the para on this Mewtwo so I can pressure it with the booms. Unfortunately don't get it, so I'm going to go to Mew and trade here. It's interesting that no one clicks T-Wave in those spots on the guaranteed KOs. I feel like maybe we could do that more. There's a lot of chances to get away with stuff like that, but ultimately she's just taking the safety click. And here I'm just looking at this as, okay, I got the Mew paralyzed, boom. We're just going to keep pressuring with Tauros now, make it as hard as possible for her to switch, and she shows another Slowbro. Now this I'm happy about because I have the right Mewtwo set to deal with this, and I also have T-Bolt Bull to help pressure it a little more in the meantime, in case she goes for something like a little cheekier, like trying to Amnesia or T-Wave or whatever. Amnesia in case of like Egg coming in, but I don't think she would do that because that's pretty risky there. Now, I have a Sleep Blocker in my Egg, but I also can just boom this on her probably staying in. I'm just trying to push things down. I do think I got a bit hasty though. I don't think I needed to boom that Gengar. I think it would have been a good thing to save for the Slowbro, just in case of my Mewtwo getting disabled in some way, such as by this Tauros. So I do think maybe I should have used the Executor as a sleep blocker and just traded there. And Cloyster coming in, and now I'm a bit worried, like if this is T-Bolt Bull, I could be in big trouble. Luckily, in this case, it's not. And now the thing that worries me is just the Mew. That's what scares me. I don't really have amazing options against Mew except for using my egg, so at this point I'm a little glad I preserved it, but I'm also thinking if this is Hyper Beam I could lose. And here Psychic because I'm not going to let her recover the Mewtwo up, just so that I can try to Stun Spore the Mew. Ultimately I figured she's not going to stay right away, even if it is H-Beam, she's going to want a little more chip first. But nice double from her. Switching back the Mew, and I'm going to have to go to Egg again, and this time I think she's going to commit for it. Yeah, because if she's doing this, this tells me it's Hyper Beam, and at this point, I considered going to Cloyster. Cloyster has a 69.2% chance to tank Hyper Beam at this range. So I considered it, but ultimately I didn't go for it because I thought there's still a chance that she thinks that this is not a T-Bolt Mewtwo. And she just wants to remove the Executor and then trust like Slowbro plus Tauros will win this. Especially with the Cloy paralyzed, that means the Slowbro can actually set up and do stuff. But she gets me on it. I go to Cloy hoping, okay, I'll survive this most of the time and I can boom it. Now, unfortunately, I probably shouldn't have ripped that boom and probably should have considered doubling because I know that she knows her calcs as well. I think once I did that, I kind of gave up on winning. I think I needed to hold the Garcloy a bit longer. And then here, just if this Mewtwo gets paralyzed by Tauros, I'm kind of thinking, okay, this could be over. I just need to crit it. No crit, no para. I went for T-Bolt, just thinking like both of them need a crit to work anyway. And unfortunately, just because that didn't work out, and now I'm forced to sit here, recover stalling, and just hope the Mew paralyzes more than the Mewtwo. It's actually not that unfavorable for me if I kill this Tauros while having decent HP. Like, it's not horrible, but it's definitely less than ideal. And I think the right play, something that I did miss in the moment, I do think I had to just risk it and start setting up amnesias here. I was scared of like one Tauros crit just ending the game anyway, but I do think I needed to set up at least one amnesia in advance, and then I would have beaten this Mew. But from here, like +2 Hyper Beam is not going to KO me, so I do think there's a chance here. But the problem is she sets up again and then takes me out. So I didn't think quite far enough ahead, and that did cost me the game. Gastly's played it better. Can't say much about that. There were a couple moments like that game 1 multi-para that really sucked, but ultimately I think she had good ideas with the team. She took more time on prep and she won. I do think, though, if I'd set up on Tauros one time, I think that would have been enough to win. So that was my mistake for not considering the endgame line quite enough. Well played to her. She ties us up at 3-1 each. And that's the end of the set. Honestly, even not to get into like personal stuff, there was some stuff going on at the time that kind of affected my mood and ability to play the game. But ultimately, like after playing this match, I felt good. Like this was a fun match. I thought it was really good. I was really happy to get to play against her in tournament for the first time in a while because I skipped last UPL and we haven't really run into each other in individuals in a long time. So, like, I think that's a sign of a really good set when you come out of it feeling good after a loss. I genuinely really enjoyed it. I thought, okay, I got pretty close to winning this one despite not being in the best mindset and not having the best chance to prep beforehand. And ultimately, like I looked back at it and just was like, yeah, I can't be mad. I got outplayed on a lot of stuff in game three. Game two, like I got the Blizz freeze into crits, or that wouldn't have been quite as easy of a game. Like this was a 33 turn game in game two, and it would not have been that quick if my Mewtwo didn't decide to just freeze crit crit. And ultimately, like, game three was 31 turns. I made some silly plays, like I think I just boomed too fast and then didn't consider the end game enough with Mewtwo. So like ultimately, I kind of took it as this is a learning experience, can't be mad about it. And I think that's a good sign, especially because it's very easy in, especially on Smogon, to get sucked into this idea of like record is everything, disregard all context, and also like disregard learning. It's just about winning as much as possible. So it's kind of cool to walk out of this game thinking, yeah, actually, there's a couple of things I learned from this. There's a couple of things I got reminded of that I've like known but forgotten about. There's a couple situations that I haven't seen in a bit and kind of flubbed here. So I don't know. Just thought it was cool to walk out of this game feeling actually like pretty okay about a loss and not feeling like I let my team down, which is also a very easy thing to feel in a team tournament. So yeah, it was nice. Play afterward, we talked about the game as I mentioned, kind of like laughed at the idea of, hey, we brought some really similar ideas to cover for what we thought the other one would do to cover for each other. I think Gastlies and I have pretty frequently gotten into arms races in the lower tiers of bringing ideas to counter each other. Sometimes I win out, sometimes she wins out. Ubers is probably her best tier, so kind of unsurprising she got me in this one. And yeah, ultimately, good game. Congrats to Gasly's on the win. And that's the end of week four. So, gonna wrap this one up here. As always, let me know your thoughts or any ideas or suggestions you have, and I'll see you when I'm back with the week five ones.